Chapter 1. The Norsemen and other peoples interested in the discovery of America. It is a well-known fact that the people of southern Europe knew very little about the northern countries until about the year 875. The first account of Iceland was brought to the south by the celebrated Swedish voyager, Gardar Svaversson, who had been driven far to the north by adverse winds, and who discovered this lone and romantic island. Gardar was followed by Nadid, and the latter by Raven Floke, who brought 3 ravens with him to guide him in his search for land, and to whom the world is indebted for the present name of Iceland. In the year 874, Ingolf and Jorleif, 2 young chieftains from Norway, who had been implicated in some political troubles, came to Iceland with their families and their slaves, and settled at Reykjavik, where the capital of the island now stands. In the course of a few years, Iceland was peopled with refugees from Norway and the British Isles. The island was one of the last places on the face of the earth to be peopled, and yet the settlers brought with them a knowledge of Christianity and the arts and letters of Europe. From 874 to 930 the country was ruled by chiefs and judges. In the latter year the great legislative assembly, called the Althing, was established at Thingvalla, and from that time until the year 1262 Iceland enjoyed a glorious republican freedom. In 1262 the country was given over to Norway, and later on it came under the control of Denmark. The history of the early Icelandic Republic is the most remarkable chapter in the history of human freedom. The island had no king, no written constitution, no regular army, no organized police force. Every farmer was his own soldier, and disputes were settled by judges elected by the people. The Althing was a democratic legislature, where free speech prevailed, and where justice was meted out with comparative purity and exactness. To Iceland belongs the glory of having given to the world the best code of laws and the finest historical literature of the Middle Ages. In the olden time this island was the home of liberty, of poetry, of eloquence, of learning, of commerce, and of chivalry. While England was groaning under the yoke of the Normans, and France was distracted with anarchy, the Icelander was cultivating literature, studying the laws of his land, and delivering political orations in his democratic Althing. The people were naturally bold and enterprising, and their descendants have not lost these characteristics. In 875 we find the Norsemen sailing from Norway to Iceland. In 982 they sailed from Iceland to Greenland. In 986 Bjarn Herjulfsson was driven by a storm to the shores of the American continent. He told his story to Leif, the son of Eric the Red. Leif bought Bjarn's ship, manned it with 35 sailors, and went in search of the new land. He found it, and gave it the name Vinland. This happened in the year 1000, nearly 500 years before the birth of Columbus. The Norsemen kept up an irregular intercourse with this continent for more than 300 years, and the stories of these voyages have been handed down to us in the old Icelandic sagas. The language in which these sagas are written has not changed in the last 8 centuries, and the old documents can be read today by the Icelanders as easily as an Englishman can read the Vicar of Wakefield. The Icelanders wrote down the records of their discoveries in a book called the Landnámabók, or the Doomsday Book. This book is still in existence, and it contains a full account of the settlement of Iceland, Greenland, and Vinland. That the Norsemen discovered America cannot be denied. The simple and truthful story of the sagas, the character of the discoverers, the geographical descriptions, and the ruins in Greenland and America are all conclusive. The Norsemen were a race of noble navigators. Their ships were large, strong, and well built. They had sails and oars, and were guided by the sun, moon, stars, and landmarks. The compass was unknown, but these hardy sailors boldly crossed the broad Atlantic without its aid. They were governed by law, and their descendants have given to Europe its best system of jurisprudence. The discovery of America by the Norsemen is a fact supported by as good evidence as that which establishes any other great event in history. We propose to present the subject in a clear and concise form, without coloring or distortion, and to give the reader an opportunity to judge for himself. Chapter 2. Norse literature has been neglected by the learned men of the great nations. It is a singular fact that while the old Greek and Latin classics have been printed in 100 different forms, and translated into all modern tongues, the early literature of the Norsemen has been almost wholly neglected. The great literary men of England, France, Germany, and Italy have treated this literature with a cold disdain, and in some cases with positive contempt. The learned societies of Europe have spent thousands of dollars in publishing mutilated copies of the classics. but they have done little or nothing to bring out the rich treasures of the Norse literature. Yet the latter has the merit of being nearer to us in time, in thought, and in language, than either the Greek or Latin. It gives us the only true picture of the early life of the Teutonic nations, and it reveals to us the first dawn of liberty among the nations of the north. While the heroes of Homer were fighting for a woman, and the Romans were murdering each other for the sake of power, the Norsemen were founding republics, establishing free courts of justice, and proclaiming the rights of the individual man. The songs of the Edda, the sagas of Iceland, and the laws of the early Scandinavian people form a body of literature as original, as bold, as poetic, as vigorous, as valuable as anything left us by Greece or Rome. The neglect of this literature may be accounted for in two ways. In the first place, it was written in a language that has never been very widely studied, and in the second place, it has always been feared that the free spirit of the Norsemen might come in conflict with the arbitrary ideas of the dominant priesthood. It is only of late that the Icelandic tongue has been taught in the universities of Europe, and up to the present day very few of the great scholars of the world have taken the trouble to master it. It has been sneeringly called a barbarous tongue, a dead language, and an uncouth jargon. Yet it is one of the oldest and richest languages in existence, and the people who speak it today are among the most intelligent in the world. We can account for the neglect of this literature by pointing to the same spirit which led the Roman Catholics to burn the books of the Christians, and the Christians to burn the books of the Jews and the Mohammedans. The priests have always been afraid of knowledge that was not under their own control, and hence it is that they have made war upon the Norse literature. And yet this literature is not opposed to Christianity. It is simply the truthful record of a great people, who lived noble lives before they heard of Christ, and who accepted Christianity with gladness as soon as it was brought to them. The sagas of Iceland are simply history in its most attractive form. They are a record of facts. The story of Leif and Thorfinn is as true as the story of Columbus and Vespucci. The Icelanders were a thoughtful and studious people. They wrote down everything they saw, and in the course of a few centuries they collected a library of manuscript books that throws all other early literature into the shade. These manuscripts are now preserved in the Royal Library of Copenhagen, and are regarded as the choicest treasures of the Danish nation. They contain a complete record of the settlement of Iceland, Greenland, and Vinland, as well as a full account of the social, political, and religious life of the early Norsemen. Among these books is the celebrated Landnámabók, or Doomsday Book, containing the name of every settler in Iceland, his family history, and the location of his estate. This book is written with the greatest care, and every name and date can be verified by the genealogies of the present day. The early Norsemen were remarkably truthful in their writings. They recorded things just as they happened. They were not afraid of the truth. They had no popes or kings to please, and they dared to speak their honest convictions. It is no wonder, then, that the records of the Norsemen are not in high favor with those who believe in the divine right of kings and in the infallibility of priests. We do not hesitate to say that the Icelandic literature is of more value to the American student than either the Greek or the Latin. It tells the story of the early dwellers in Northern Europe, the ancestors of the Anglo-Saxon race, and it gives us a truthful and inspiring picture of the first republic that ever existed on Earth. It is not our purpose to go into an elaborate discussion of the Icelandic literature in this little book. Our only aim is to show that the claims of the Norsemen to the discovery of America are supported by evidence found in documents that are worthy of all credit. We shall endeavor to state the case briefly, clearly, and candidly, and we shall ask the reader to lay aside all prejudice, and judge the matter as he would any other historical question. Chapter 3. A brief sketch of Norse history and exploration. The Norsemen were a branch of the great Teutonic family. They inhabited the northern part of Europe, and were known in early times as Northmen, Danes, Vikings, Sea Kings, and Scandinavians. They were brave, warlike, and enterprising. They loved the sea, and their ships sailed over every known ocean. They discovered Iceland in 860, and settled it in 874. They discovered Greenland in 982, and planted a colony there in 985. They discovered America in the year 1000, and visited it repeatedly for 300 years. The Norsemen were the terror of Europe during the Middle Ages. They descended upon the coasts of England, France, Germany, Spain, and Italy, and carried off immense booty. But they were not mere pirates. They were colonizers, lawgivers, and poets. They founded the Russian Empire, conquered Normandy, and established kingdoms in England, Scotland, and Ireland. They left their language, their laws, and their blood in every country they visited. They were tall, fair-haired, blue-eyed men, with broad shoulders and powerful frames. They were lovers of liberty and believers in personal independence. The Norsemen had a religion of their own. They believed in Odin, Thor, and the gods of Valhalla. They believed that every brave man would go to heaven, and every coward to hell. Their heaven was a warrior's hall, where there was fighting all day and feasting all night. Their hell was a place of shame, darkness, and pain. They despised cowardice and honored bravery above all things. The Norsemen were great poets. Their Eddas and sagas are full of fire, spirit, and beauty. Their language was rich, strong, and musical. Their poetry was full of metaphors, similes, and alliterations. It stirred the hearts of their warriors and made them despise death. The Norsemen were fond of history. They kept careful records of their voyages, battles, laws, and genealogies. They wrote books in the Icelandic tongue and preserved them with religious care. These books are still in existence and formed the foundation of Scandinavian history. The Norsemen were great explorers. They believed the world was round, and they sailed boldly into unknown seas. They discovered many islands in the North Atlantic and gave them Norse names. They visited Scotland, Ireland, the Faroe Islands, Iceland, Greenland, and America. They penetrated the White Sea, the Mediterranean, and even the Black Sea. They were the first to pass the Straits of Gibraltar, and the first to sail beyond the North Cape. The Norsemen were great warriors. They fought with the sword, the axe, and the spear. They wore coats of mail and carried round shields. They fought on foot, on horseback, and in ships. They never asked quarter, and never gave it. They preferred death to dishonor. The Norsemen were republicans. They hated kings and loved liberty. They held public meetings and voted by a show of hands. They had a regular code of laws and courts of justice. They had judges, juries, and advocates. They punished crime severely and protected the rights of property. The Norsemen were honest and truthful. They believed in telling the truth and keeping their word. They despised a liar and banished him from society. They were generous and hospitable. They gave freely to the poor and treated strangers with kindness. The Norsemen were cleanly in their habits. They bathed frequently and took pride in their personal appearance. They wore neat and tasteful clothing and were fond of ornaments. Their women were beautiful, intelligent, and virtuous. The Norsemen were great lovers of liberty. They could not endure tyranny, and they often left their native land rather than submit to the will of a king. They believed in the equality of man and respected labor. They had no caste, and every man was the architect of his own fortune. The Norsemen were great navigators. Their ships were light, strong, and swift. They were built of oak and propelled by oars and sails. They had high prows and sterns carved in the form of dragons. They could sail close to the wind and outride the fiercest storm. The Norsemen were the first Europeans to discover America. They came not as conquerors, but as explorers. They found a rich and fertile land, with grapes, timber, and fish in abundance. They called it Vinland, and tried to plant colonies there. Their voyages were not accidental. They went in search of land, and they found it. They kept records of their discoveries, and preserved them in written form. The Norse discovery of America is no longer a matter of doubt. It is proved by Icelandic manuscripts, by historical traditions, by geographical descriptions, and by existing ruins. The Norsemen did not hold America as a colony. Their settlements were temporary, and their intercourse with the continent was interrupted by wars, famines, and internal dissensions. But the fact of their discovery remains, and entitles them to the honor of being the first Europeans who set foot on the soil of the New World. Chapter 4. Ancient documents proving Norse discovery. The evidences of the Norse discovery of America are found in the ancient Icelandic manuscripts. These manuscripts are preserved in the Royal Library of Copenhagen, and are regarded as the most valuable relics of Northern literature. They are written in the Old Norse tongue, which is still spoken in Iceland, and which has remained unchanged for more than 800 years. The most important of these documents is the Saga of Eric the Red. This saga was written by Thorkel Gellerson, an Icelander of high reputation, who had access to the original documents, and who was personally acquainted with many of the men whose deeds he records. Another important document is the Saga of Thorfinn Karlsefni. This saga gives a detailed account of the voyage of Thorfinn to Vinland, and contains the names of his companions, and of the places which they visited. It was written by a man named Hawk, who was descended from Thorfinn, and who had in his possession the family records. These sagas agree in all essential particulars. They tell us that Leif, the son of Eric the Red, sailed from Greenland about the year 1000, and discovered a land lying to the southwest. He found grapes, grain, and timber growing wild, and he called the country Vinland. Soon after this, Thorvald, a brother of Leif, sailed to Vinland, and spent 2 winters there. He was killed by the natives, and was buried on the coast. His companions returned to Greenland. A few years later, Thorfinn Karlsefni, a wealthy and intelligent Icelander, fitted out an expedition, and sailed for Vinland. He took with him his wife, his household, and 160 men. He remained in the country 3 years, and his wife gave birth to a son, who was the first European child born in America. The name of this child was Snor. He became a great man in Iceland, and from him descended many of the most distinguished families of that island. These sagas give us a detailed account of the voyage, the landing, the intercourse with the natives, the planting of the colony, the troubles that ensued, and the final return of the colonists. They are written in a plain, truthful, and straightforward style, and bear the marks of genuine history. They contain no extravagant statements, no miracles, and no attempts at rhetorical embellishment. They are evidently the work of honest men, who wrote what they knew, and who had no object to gain by deceiving their readers. These documents were written long before Columbus was born. They were copied and recopied by careful scribes, and have come down to us in good condition. They are preserved in the archives of a Christian kingdom, and have been subjected to the closest scrutiny of modern criticism. No competent scholar has ever questioned their genuineness. The sagas have been translated into Latin, Danish, German, and English, and are accessible to all who wish to examine them. They agree with the geography of North America. They describe capes, bays, rivers, lakes, and islands which are still in existence. They mention the wild grape, the self-sown wheat, the fish, the forest, and the climate of the country. All these descriptions agree with what we know of the coast of New England. In addition to these written documents, we have the ruins in Greenland, at Julienshap, and other places on the western coast of Greenland. The ruins of Norse churches, dwellings, and tombs may still be seen. These ruins were first described by Hans Egede, a Danish missionary, who visited Greenland in 1721. They have since been explored by many travelers, and their Norse origin is no longer denied. Stone houses, stone fences, and stone churches, built after the manner of the Norse architecture of the 11th century, are found in various parts of Greenland. Some of these buildings were roofed with sod, and some had stone roofs. The ruins of Gardar, the old cathedral town of Greenland, are still visible. At this place there was a bishop's see, with a cathedral, a monastery, and a palace. The cathedral was 100 feet long, and 60 feet wide, and the bishop had jurisdiction over all the churches of Greenland and Vinland. There were also bells, organs, vestments, and other church furniture. The bishop had a large farm, with many cattle and sheep, and lived in great style. All this is recorded in the Icelandic documents, and is confirmed by the existing ruins. These ruins prove that Greenland was inhabited by a civilized people, who brought their religion, their architecture, and their customs from Europe. They also show that the Norsemen had colonies in America long before the time of Columbus. Chapter 5. The Voyage of Bjarne Herjulfsson. The first European who saw the mainland of America was Bjarne Herjulfsson. He was a Norwegian by birth, but had removed to Iceland with his father. His father, Herjulf, afterward joined an expedition to Greenland, under Eric the Red. Bjarne was absent at the time, and when he returned to Iceland and found that his father had gone to Greenland, he determined to follow him. He fitted out a ship, manned it with a crew of able sailors, and set sail from Iceland in the year 986. He had no knowledge of the route, and depended wholly on tradition and the stars. He was driven far to the south and west by a succession of storms, and after sailing many days, he came in sight of land. This land was covered with dense forests, and was low and level. Bjarne did not go on shore, but sailed northward for several days. He again saw land, but did not land. Still sailing northward, he saw a third region, with high mountains and snowy peaks. Here, Again, he did not stop, but continued his course, and finally reached Greenland. He found his father, and gave him an account of his voyage. This story made a deep impression on the Greenlanders. It was talked of in every home and gathering, and excited the greatest interest. The idea of a new land, with forests and fertile fields, fired the imagination of the people. But Bjarn was censured for not having gone ashore. It was thought that he had shown a want of enterprise, and his voyage was not fully appreciated until many years afterward. The exact course of Bjarn cannot be determined, but it is supposed that the first land he saw was Newfoundland, the second Nova Scotia, and the third Cape Cod. He did not give names to these lands, and no colonies were planted by him. He was simply a navigator, blown out of his course by storms, who saw a new continent, but failed to explore it. Yet his voyage was the immediate cause of the subsequent expeditions to Vinland. His account of the rich lands he had seen stirred up Leif, the son of Eric the Red, to action. Leif resolved to follow the track of Bjarn, and examine the lands himself. He bought Bjarn's ship, engaged a crew of 35 men, and set sail about the year 1000. He sailed first to the land seen last by Bjarn. This he named Helgeland, or the land of flat rocks. Thence he sailed to the next country, which he called Markland, or the woodland. He then sailed 2 days with a northeast wind, and came to a third land, which he named Vinland. This was a beautiful country, with a mild climate, rich vegetation, abundant grapes, wild wheat, timber, fish, and game. Leif and his crew built houses, and spent the winter there. In the spring he returned to Greenland, taking with him specimens of the fruits, woods, and products of the new country. This voyage was a great success, and gave Leif the name of the Lucky. He became a man of note in Greenland, and was afterward appointed to rule the colony. Thus, through the accidental voyage of Bjarn Herjulfsson, the Norsemen were led to the discovery and partial colonization of the American continent, nearly 5 centuries before Columbus. The voyages of Bjarn and Leif are not myths or legends, but historical facts, recorded in contemporary documents, and confirmed by the evidence of ruins, geography, and natural productions. They mark the beginning of a series of expeditions, which extended over 3 centuries, and which form one of the most romantic and honorable chapters in the history of discovery. Chapter 6. Leif the Lucky and his discovery of Vinland. Leif, the son of Eric the Red, was one of the noblest and most enterprising of the Norsemen. He was born in Iceland, but removed with his father to Greenland, and grew up in the midst of the stirring scenes of that wild and rugged country. He was tall, strong, handsome, and brave. He was early noted for his skill in navigation, and his voyages to Norway, Iceland, and the western seas gave him a high reputation. When he heard the story of Bjarn Herjulfsson, and learned that a new country had been seen to the southwest, his mind was at once inflamed with the desire to explore it. He bought Bjarn's ship, manned it with a chosen crew of 35 men, and set sail from Greenland about the year 1000. His course was southwesterly, and after many days he came to a barren and rocky land, which he called Helgeland. This was probably Newfoundland. The rocks were bare, the mountains desolate, and the country uninviting. He did not remain there, but sailed to another land, more level and covered with forests. This he called Markland, or the woodland. This was probably Nova Scotia. Again he sailed southward, and after 2 days came to a beautiful country, with mild climate, rich soil, abundant woods, grapes, wild wheat, and good fishing. This was Vinland. It was probably some part of Massachusetts or Rhode Island. Here he landed, built houses, and remained during the winter. He divided his men into 2 parties, one of which remained at the camp, while the other explored the surrounding country. They found the temperature mild, the day and night of equal length, and the country fertile. They found grapes in abundance, and wild wheat growing without cultivation. Leif gave the country the name Vinland, or the land of vines. He remained during the winter, and in the spring returned to Greenland, taking with him grapes, grain, and timber. His voyage was regarded as a great success. He was called Leif the Lucky, and was honored and beloved by the people. He became governor of Greenland, and exercised a strong and beneficent influence over the colony. His voyage forms one of the most interesting and important chapters in the history of discovery. It was the first real exploration of the American coast by Europeans, and it resulted in the founding of a new province, the discovery of new plants and animals, and the extension of the Norse dominion beyond the seas. The saga of Leif is written in a plain and truthful style. It contains no extravagant stories, no miracles, no marvels. It is the sober narrative of an intelligent and observing man, who went to see a new land, and who told what he saw. His descriptions agree with the actual geography and productions of the American coast. The grapes, the wild wheat, the mild temperature, the length of the days and nights, all correspond to what we know of New England. The story is confirmed by other sagas, by traditions, and by various historical and geographical considerations. The voyage of Leif marks the beginning of a new era. It led to other expeditions, to the planting of colonies, and to the partial occupation of the New World by the Norsemen. Leif was the Columbus of the 11th century. He anticipated the great Genoese by nearly 500 years, and deserves the lasting gratitude of mankind. The Norsemen who followed him were worthy of their leader. They carried with them the religion, the laws, the arts, and the spirit of their race. They attempted to found Christian churches, to live under just laws, and to establish permanent homes. They were not mere adventurers or pirates. They were pioneers of civilization, and deserve an honored place in the annals of America. Chapter 7. Thorvald, brother of Leif, and his voyage to Vinland. After Leif's return to Greenland, his discoveries were the chief topic of interest among the people. His brother Thorvald was particularly impressed by the accounts of Vinland, and resolved to visit the country and establish a colony there. He fitted out Leif's ship, took with him 30 men, and set sail for the new land. He followed the same course, visited Helgeland and Markland, and finally reached Vinland. Here they landed, built houses, and remained during the winter. They found the country rich and beautiful, with good fishing, fine forests, and plenty of wild grapes. In the spring they began to explore the coast. They sailed along the shore, entered various bays, and examined the surrounding country. In the course of their voyage they found a beautiful place, where they landed and built a house. They were much pleased with this region, and thought it a good place for a permanent settlement. But while they were staying there, they were suddenly attacked by natives. These people came in canoes, and discharged arrows at the Norsemen. One of the arrows struck Thorvald under the arm, and he died from the wound. He was buried on the spot, and a cross was erected over his grave. His companions returned to the camp, remained during the winter, and then sailed back to Greenland. They gave an account of their voyage, and especially of the death of Thorvald. This story caused great sorrow in Greenland, for Thorvald was much beloved by all who knew him. His death also aroused a feeling of vengeance, and led to the expedition of Thorfinn Karlsefni. The voyage of Thorvald is an important link in the chain of Norse discoveries. It shows that the Norsemen not only visited America, but attempted to make settlements there. It also proves that they came in contact with the natives, and that the relations between the two races were not always friendly. The account of Thorvald's voyage is given in the sagas, and agrees in all essential points with the other narratives. It is written in a calm and simple style, and bears every mark of authenticity. The place where Thorvald was buried is not certainly known, but it was probably on the coast of Massachusetts or Rhode Island. Some antiquarians think that the graves and mounds found on the shores of Narragansett Bay may be connected with this event. At any rate, the voyage of Thorvald shows that the Norsemen not only discovered America, but attempted to occupy and defend it. They were not mere voyagers, but colonists, who brought with them their families, their religion, and their institutions. They were animated by the spirit of adventure, but also by the love of liberty and home. They tried to establish Christian colonies, and to live in peace with the natives. But the opposition of the latter, and the difficulties of the undertaking, proved too great, and the colonies were finally abandoned. Still, the fact remains, and is recorded in history, that the Norsemen discovered America, and attempted to make it their home. Chapter 8. Thorfinn Karlsefni, and his attempt to found a permanent colony. Thorfinn Karlsefni was one of the most remarkable men of his time. He was of noble birth, wealthy, learned, and brave. He had traveled much, and was familiar with the customs of various countries. He had settled in Greenland, and married Gudrid, a beautiful and accomplished woman, who had previously been married to Thorstein, a brother of Leif. Thorfinn was fired with the idea of founding a permanent colony in Vinland. He fitted out a fleet of 3 ships, and took with him 160 men, with women, cattle, and all the necessaries for a permanent settlement. He was accompanied by several distinguished men, among whom were Bjarn Grimolfsson, Snorre Thorbrandsson, Thorhall the Hunter, and Thorvald Eriksson. The expedition was conducted with great care and foresight. The ships were well provisioned, and every arrangement was made for establishing a Christian community in the New World. They sailed first to Helgeland, then to Markland, and finally to Vinland. They landed at a place called Stromfjord, and built houses, storehouses, and a church. They called the settlement Stromby. Here they remained for a year. The country was rich in resources. There were grapes, wheat, wild cattle, timber, fish, and game. The river was full of salmon, and the woods abounded in wild animals. They lived in peace, and everything promised success. But soon difficulties arose. Thorhall, one of the leaders, quarreled with the others, and determined to leave. He sailed northward, but was driven by storms to Ireland, where he was made a slave. The other colonists removed to another place, called Hop, where they found wild grapes and fields of self-sown wheat. They built new houses, and remained there during the summer. But they were soon visited by natives, who came in canoes, bringing skins for barter. At first, the intercourse was friendly. The Norsemen gave the natives red cloth, milk, and food. But one day a bull ran out of the woods, and frightened the natives. They fled, but soon returned in great numbers, and attacked the colony. A fierce battle ensued. The Norsemen were victorious, but they saw that they could not remain in safety. They therefore abandoned Hop, and returned to Stromfjord. Here they spent the winter. In the spring they decided to return to Greenland. They had been 3 years in America, and had made great discoveries, but the hostility of the natives made permanent settlement impossible. During their stay in Vinland, Gudrid, the wife of Thorfinn, gave birth to a son, named Snorre. This was the first European child born in America. From Snorre descended many distinguished Icelandic families. Thorfinn returned to Greenland, and afterward went to Iceland, where he settled, and became the founder of a powerful house. He was a wise and just man, and lived to a great age. His descendants preserved the memory of his voyage, and his saga is one of the most important in Icelandic literature. The expedition of Thorfinn is the most remarkable of all the Norse voyages. It was a deliberate attempt to colonize America, under Christian auspices, and with all the means of civilization. It was not a mere accident or adventure, but a well-organized movement, planned and executed by intelligent men. The colony was abandoned only because of the hostility of the natives. The Norsemen showed courage, prudence, and humanity. They respected the rights of the natives, and made every effort to live in peace with them. But the savages could not understand their motives, and regarded them as intruders. Hence the colony failed. But the memory of Thorfinn's expedition remained. It proved that America could be reached, that it was a rich and fertile land, and that it might become the home of a Christian people. It paved the way for future explorations, and forms an honorable page in the history of discovery. Chapter 9. Character of the Northmen. In order to appreciate the importance of the Norse discovery of America, it is necessary to understand the character of the men who made it. The Northmen were not savages, pirates, or barbarians. They were a brave, free, and intelligent people. They had a literature, a religion, a code of laws, and a system of government. They were lovers of liberty, and believed in the equality of man. They had parliaments, courts of justice, and written statutes. They were skilled in agriculture, commerce, and the arts. They built ships, sailed the ocean, and explored unknown seas. They were honest, truthful, and hospitable. They despised cowardice, falsehood, and oppression. Their religion, though pagan, was lofty and inspiring. They believed in one supreme God, in the immortality of the soul, and in rewards and punishments after death. They had no idols, no temples, no altars. They worshipped in the open air, on the hilltop or by the seashore. They offered sacrifices, and sang hymns of praise. Their gods were heroic, not sensual. They taught courage, truth, and fidelity. The Northmen were great poets. Their sagas and eddas are full of genius, fire, and imagination. Their poetry was not soft and sentimental, but strong, wild, and picturesque. It was the poetry of storm and battle, of the sea, the mountain, and the sword. They sang of heroes, gods, and destiny. They believed that every man had a fate, and that he must meet it bravely. They looked upon death as a release, and a passage to a better world. They entered battle without fear, and died with songs upon their lips. The Northmen were the first republicans of Europe. They had no kings, except such as were chosen by the people. They had a general assembly, called the Althing, which made laws, tried criminals, and settled disputes. Every freeman had a voice in public affairs. There were no privileged classes. The poorest man might rise to the highest office. Merit, not birth, was the test of honor. The women of the Northmen were virtuous, industrious, and respected. They managed the household, educated the children, and took part in the affairs of the community. They were not shut up in harems, nor degraded into toys. They were the companions of their husbands, and often their advisers. Some of them were poets, prophetesses, and physicians. The Northmen had schools, books, and libraries. They taught their children to read and write. They composed histories, laws, and religious poems. They copied manuscripts and preserved them with care. The sagas of Iceland are as full of thought, wisdom, and beauty as any literature of the same age. The Norsemen were a maritime people. They lived on the sea and drew their food from its depths. They built ships of oak and launched them on every ocean. They discovered Iceland, Greenland, and America. They visited Russia, Constantinople, Spain, and Africa. They explored the Mediterranean, the Red Sea, and the Atlantic. They were the greatest sailors of the Middle Ages. They went not as pirates, but as explorers and colonists. They planted settlements, built churches, and introduced Christianity. They carried with them the cross, the law book, and the plow. They were not destroyers, but founders of states. In short, the Northmen were a noble race. They had faults, but they had great virtues. They were stern, but just, brave, but humane. They believed in work, freedom, and the dignity of man. They laid the foundations of modern Europe and gave to the world some of its best blood. The discovery of America by such men was not an accident. It was the natural result of their enterprise, courage, and love of knowledge. They were not afraid to face the unknown. They sought new lands, not for gold, but for homes. They were the true pioneers of civilization. Chapter 10. The claims of Columbus tested by facts. Columbus is generally regarded as the discoverer of America. His name is in all the histories. His monuments are in every land, and his fame is worldwide. But what did Columbus really do? He sailed from Spain in 1492 and reached an island in the West Indies. He never saw the mainland of the United States. He never saw the continent of North America. He never set foot on the soil now called the United States. He supposed that he had reached the coast of Asia. He died in that belief. He never knew that he had discovered a new continent. He believed that Cuba was a part of the Asiatic coast, and that he was near India. He called the natives Indians, and the name has remained. He never claimed to have discovered a new world. He claimed to have found a new route to the old world. Now let us compare this with the facts already stated. The Northmen discovered the mainland of North America in the year 1000. They landed on the coast, explored the country, and planted colonies. They knew that it was a new land. They described its soil, climate, productions, and people. They wrote books about it and gave it a name. They called it Vinland. They came not as adventurers, but as colonists. They brought their wives, children, and domestic animals. They built houses, cultivated the soil, and attempted to found Christian communities. They remained for years, and only abandoned their colonies when compelled by the hostility of the natives. Their voyages are recorded in ancient manuscripts, which are still preserved. These manuscripts are written in a pure and simple style, and bear every mark of truth. They have been translated, examined, and confirmed by scholars of all nations. They are supported by the existing ruins in Greenland, by the geographical accuracy of the descriptions, and by the correspondence of the facts with the known features of the American coast. In the face of these facts, how can we say that Columbus discovered America? He came 500 years after the Northmen. He never saw the continent. He supposed he was on the coast of Asia. He never knew that he had found a new world. His voyage was accidental. He was trying to reach India by sailing west. He failed in his object, but stumbled upon an island. He thought it was part of the East Indies. He never discovered the Real America. This is not to deny that Columbus was a great man. He was brave, earnest, and persevering. He crossed the ocean in a small vessel, with an untried crew, and in the face of opposition. He encountered storms, mutiny, and what? He had a great idea. and he carried it out. He deserved honor, and he has received it. But he is not entitled to the name of discoverer of America. That name belongs to the Norsemen. They found the continent. They landed on its shores. They explored its forests. They planted colonies. They built houses and churches. They gave names to its rivers, bays, and headlands. They recorded their voyages. They described the climate, the soil, the grapes, the wheat, the fish, and the wild animals. They knew they had found a new land. They tried to make it their home. The claim of Columbus rests on a mistake. He thought he was in Asia. He died in that belief. The real honor of discovering America belongs to the Norsemen. They earned it by courage, enterprise, and faith. They deserve to be remembered and honored by all who value truth and justice. Let us give to every man his due. Let us not build history on falsehood. Let us teach our children the facts. Let us tell them that the Northmen discovered America, that they planted colonies and tried to make homes, that they came 500 years before Columbus, that they were Christians, lawgivers, and poets, that they loved liberty and honored truth, that they were the true pioneers of the New World. Chapter 11. Summary of Norse Voyages to America. In order to make the subject more clear, it may be well to give a brief summary of the Norse voyages to America. This will show the sequence of events and the continuity of the discoveries. In the year 986, Bjarne Herjolfsson sailed from Iceland to Greenland, missed his course, and came in sight of the American coast. He saw land covered with forests, but did not land. He returned to Greenland and reported what he had seen. About the year 1000, Leif, the son of Eric the Red, sailed from Greenland to the land seen by Bjarne. He visited Helgeland, Markland, and Vinland. He landed in Vinland, built houses, remained during the winter, and returned to Greenland in the spring. He brought with him grapes, grain, and timber. Soon after, Thorvald, a brother of Leif, sailed to Vinland and remained 2 years. He was killed by the natives and buried on the coast. His companions returned to Greenland. In the year 1007, Thorfinn Karlsefni, a wealthy and intelligent Icelander, fitted out an expedition for the purpose of planting a permanent colony in Vinland. He sailed with 3 ships, 160 men, women, children, and domestic animals. He remained 3 years, explored the coast, fought with the natives, and returned to Greenland. His wife gave birth to a son in Vinland. This was the first European child born in America. Other voyages followed. Fridis, a sister of Leif, made an expedition to Vinland. She was a bold and unscrupulous woman, and committed great cruelties. Her story is told in the sagas. Expeditions were also made from Greenland to Markland and other parts of the coast. These voyages continued for more than 300 years. They are mentioned in the Icelandic annals, and confirmed by existing ruins. The Norsemen had a regular trade with the American coast. They obtained timber, furs, grapes, and other products. This trade was carried on from Greenland, and formed one of the sources of its prosperity. The colonies in Greenland continued for nearly 500 years. They had churches, schools, and a bishopric. They were visited by priests and missionaries. They kept up a communication with Iceland and Norway. The colonists finally perished or were absorbed by the Eskimos. Their churches fell into ruin. Their farms were abandoned. Their history became a tradition. But the memory of their deeds was preserved in the sagas. These sagas were copied by careful hands, preserved in the libraries of Iceland and Denmark, and have come down to us unimpaired. They have been translated into modern languages, examined by scholars, and confirmed by independent evidence. This summary shows that the discovery of America by the Norsemen was not a single event, but a series of voyages, explorations, and settlements. It was not an accident, but a deliberate movement, based on knowledge, and carried out with skill and courage. The Norsemen knew what they were doing. They went to find new lands, to plant colonies, and to extend the dominion of their race. They were not dreamers, but practical men. They were not pirates, but pioneers. They carried with them the cross, the law book, and the plow. They built houses, planted grain, and tried to live in peace. They failed, not from want of courage, but from the hostility of the natives, and the difficulties of the undertaking. But they left behind them the evidence of their work, in sagas, ruins, and traditions. This evidence has been examined by the best scholars, and is now accepted as authentic. The discovery of America by the Norsemen is no longer a theory, but a fact. It rests on ancient documents, existing ruins, and geographical coincidences. It is confirmed by every test of history. Chapter 12. Ruins in Greenland. The most important evidence of the Norse settlements in America is found in the ruins of Greenland. These ruins are numerous, extensive, and well preserved. They consist of churches, monasteries, dwellings, tombs, and other structures. They are built of stone, and show considerable skill in masonry. They are situated on both sides of the coast, but especially in the southern part of Greenland. The most remarkable ruins are found at Qaqortoq, Igaliku, and Julianshap. At Qaqortoq are the remains of a cathedral, with walls 4 feet thick, and built in regular courses. The windows are arched, and the doorways well finished. Near the church are other buildings, evidently used for religious purposes. There are also tombs, some of which contain inscriptions. At Igaliku are the ruins of a monastery, with cloisters, cells, and a chapel. The masonry is good, and the arrangement regular. There are also stone walls, enclosures, and remains of cultivated fields. At Julianshap are the ruins of a large church, with nave, choir, and transept. The dimensions are considerable, and the workmanship good. There are also dwellings, storehouses, and other buildings. The whole region bears traces of a large and prosperous settlement. In addition to these, ruins have been found at various other points. Some of them are on the islands, and others on the main coast. They extend for several hundred miles, and indicate a numerous population. The houses are generally small, with thick walls, low doors, and narrow windows. They were evidently built to resist the climate. Some of the buildings were used as barns, stables, and workshops. There are also stone fences, walls, bridges, and roads. The ruins have been examined by Danish scholars and carefully described. They agree in character with the architecture of the 11th and 12th centuries. They show that the colonists were Christians, civilized, and industrious. The churches are built in the Romanesque style, with round arches, solid walls, and small windows. They resemble the churches of Iceland, Norway, and northern Scotland. In some places, traces of iron, glass, and pottery have been found. Also portions of tools, implements, and ornaments. These relics show that the people were skilled in the arts and lived in comfort. The ruins are not the work of the Eskimos. They are entirely different in style, material, and purpose. The Eskimos build of turf, snow, and skins. They do not use stone, except for lamps and weapons. They have no churches, monasteries, or dwellings like those described. The traditions of the Eskimos confirm this. They say that a white race once lived in the land, that they built stone houses, and had strange customs. They speak of their dress, ships, and religion. They say that the white men were driven away by war and famine. These traditions agree with the Norse accounts. They show that the ruins are not modern, but belong to a lost people. The inscriptions found in Greenland also confirm this. They are in the Runic alphabet, used by the Norsemen. They give names, dates, and events. One of them records the death of a man in the year 1135. Another mentions a voyage to Markland. These inscriptions are genuine and have been deciphered by competent scholars. They are preserved in museums and have been photographed and published. In short, the ruins in Greenland prove beyond doubt that the Norsemen settled there. They prove that the settlements were large, long-continued, and Christian. They prove that the people were civilized, industrious, and artistic. They prove that they kept up a communication with Europe, built churches, and observed religious rites. They confirm the sagas and make them history. They show that America was known to Europeans 500 years before Columbus. They are monuments of a forgotten race and should be studied with reverence. They tell a story of hope, enterprise, and failure. They show what man can do and how he may perish. They appeal to our sympathy, our imagination, and our faith. They are the tombstones of a vanished people. Chapter 13. American Antiquities. In addition to the ruins in Greenland, there are numerous antiquities on the American continent which support the theory of Norse discovery. These antiquities consist of mounds, forts, implements, inscriptions, and other remains. Some of them are of unknown origin and differ from the works of the Indian tribes. They are found in New England, New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and the western states. They are also found in Canada, and on the shores of the Great Lakes. One of the most remarkable of these is the so-called Dighton Rock. This is a large stone, lying on the shore of Taunton River, in Massachusetts. It is covered with strange inscriptions, which have puzzled scholars for 2 centuries. These inscriptions have been variously explained. Some have ascribed them to the Indians, others to the Phoenicians, others to the Chinese. But the best authorities agree that they are Runic, and of Norse origin. The characters resemble those found in Greenland and Iceland. The arrangement corresponds to that of Norse inscriptions. The names and symbols are Norse. One inscription is said to contain the name of Thorfinn Karlsefni. If this be true, it confirms the story of his voyage. Another American antiquity is the so-called Newport Tower. This is a round stone structure, standing on 8 pillars, and situated in Newport, Rhode Island. It is built in the Romanesque style, with round arches, solid masonry, and regular courses. It resembles the old churches of Scandinavia and northern Scotland. It differs from all Indian, Spanish, or English structures in America. It is evidently very old. The mortar has perished. The stones are weather-worn. The place is mentioned in old records. The early settlers found it standing. They did not know who built it. Tradition said it was the work of white men, long before the English came. Many theories have been advanced to explain it. Some said it was built by the English, others by the Spaniards, others by the Portuguese. But none of these theories are satisfactory. The style is not English, Spanish, or Portuguese. It is Norse. It resembles the round churches of Scandinavia. It stands in the very region where the Norsemen are said to have landed. It corresponds in date, style, and location with the Norse sagas. It is probably a Norse baptistry or watchtower. If this be so, it is the oldest stone structure in the United States. It is the only existing monument of pre-Columbian discovery. Other antiquities have been found in America which support the Norse theory. At Fall River, Massachusetts, a skeleton was found in armor, with a sword, belt, and ornaments. The armor was of a kind used in northern Europe in the 11th century. The sword was of Norse pattern. The skull was of the Norse type. At various places, runic inscriptions have been found. At Grave Creek, Ohio, a stone was dug up with strange characters. At Davenport, Iowa, a tablet was discovered with figures and writing. At Kensington, Minnesota, a runic stone was unearthed, bearing an inscription of date 1362. This last has been carefully examined by scholars, and pronounced genuine. It records the visit of Norsemen from Vinland, who had penetrated the interior. These antiquities are not conclusive, but they are corroborative. They support the sagas. They point in the same direction. They show that white men visited America before Columbus. They differ from Indian remains. They resemble Norse objects. They are found in the regions described in the sagas. They are of the right age, style, and material. Taken together, they form a mass of evidence which cannot be ignored. They do not prove everything, but they prove much. They show that the Norse discovery is not a myth, but a fact, that it is supported by relics, ruins, and monuments, that it deserves a place in history, and in the education of the people. Chapter 14. Objections answered. The Norse discovery of America has been doubted by some persons. They say that the evidence is uncertain, that the sagas are fables, that the ruins are of unknown origin. Let us examine these objections. It is said that the sagas are not trustworthy, but the sagas have been examined by the best scholars. They have been found to be accurate in style, language, and geography. They agree with each other. They are confirmed by ancient annals. They contain nothing improbable. They describe real places, real persons, and real events. They have been preserved in authentic manuscripts. They were copied by learned men, and are now printed in modern languages. They bear all the marks of truth. It is said that the ruins in Greenland are of later date. But these ruins have been examined by Danish archaeologists. They agree in style with the churches of the 11th and 12th centuries. They contain runic inscriptions, dating from the 12th century. They are built in Romanesque style, with round arches and massive walls. They are mentioned in Icelandic and Norwegian records. They were found by the Danish settlers in Greenland. They are not Eskimo works. They are Christian churches and dwellings. It is said that the American antiquities are uncertain, but many of these antiquities are well authenticated. The Newport Tower is described in old records. The Dighton Rock has been known for 2 centuries. The Fall River skeleton was examined by scientific men. The Kensington stone has been photographed and translated. The characters are Runic. The style is Norse. The date is 1362. The locality agrees with the sagas. These things cannot be dismissed as fictions. It is said that the Norse voyages were mere accidents. But the sagas show that they were deliberate. Leif fitted out an expedition. Thorfinn took 3 ships and 160 persons. They built houses, remained 3 years, and had a child born in Vinland. They made repeated voyages. They traded with the natives. They tried to found colonies. This was not accident, but design. It is said that the Norsemen had no motive for going to America. But the Norsemen were great sailors. They loved the sea. They explored the North Atlantic. They discovered Iceland and Greenland. They sought new lands. They wanted timber, pasture, and grain. They were Christians, and wished to spread their faith. They were poor, and wanted homes. These were strong motives. They were sufficient to lead brave men to America. It is said that the Norsemen left no permanent colonies, but they tried to do so. They brought women, cattle, and tools. They built houses, planted grain, and remained for years. They failed only because of the natives. But failure does not destroy the fact. They discovered America, though they could not keep it. These objections have been answered by scholars. They have been refuted by facts. The discovery of America by the Norsemen is no longer a theory. It is established by evidence. It is accepted by historians. It is confirmed by science. It rests on sagas, ruins, inscriptions, and monuments. It agrees with geography, ethnology, and archaeology. It is taught in the schools of Scandinavia. It is honored by the scholars of Europe. It is recognized by the American Antiquarian Society. It should be accepted by all who love truth. Let us be just. Let us give honor to whom honor is due. Let us not rob the Norsemen of their glory. Let us not falsify history to please tradition. Let us tell the truth, and fear not. Let us teach our children the real story of America. Let us engrave it on our monuments. Let us honor the memory of Leif, Thorfinn, and their brave companions. Let us preserve their names, their sagas, and their faith. Let us be proud of their deeds, and thankful for their example. Chapter 15. Columbus and his supporters. Some persons object to the Norse discovery of America because it interferes with the fame of Columbus. They say that it robs him of his glory and lessens his greatness. But this is a mistake. Truth does not hurt true greatness. It only hurts false claims. Columbus was a great man. He had courage, faith, and perseverance. He crossed the ocean, facing danger, ridicule, and want. He had a great idea, and he carried it out. He deserved honor, and he has received it. But he did not discover America. He discovered some islands of the West Indies. He never saw the mainland of North America. He supposed he was in Asia. He never claimed to have found a new continent. He died in that belief. The true discovery of America belongs to the Norsemen. They found the continent. They landed on its shores. They explored its forests. They built houses, planted grain, and tried to make homes. They knew it was a new land. They gave it a name. They described its soil, climate, and productions. They left behind them sagas, ruins, and inscriptions. This is not a question of sentiment, but of fact. We must choose between history and tradition. If we cling to tradition, we falsify the past. If we accept history, we do justice to all. Some persons say that the Norse discovery is not important, that it led to nothing, that it was forgotten. But this is not true. It was known in Iceland, Norway, and Denmark. It was mentioned in chronicles. It was remembered in songs. It formed part of the literature of the North. It was a source of pride to the descendants of the discoverers. It inspired new voyages. It showed the way across the sea. It proved that the ocean could be crossed. It broke the spell of the unknown. It gave courage to the future. It led, in time, to the rediscovery of the continent. We are not bound to uphold an error because it is old. Truth is older than error. The Norse discovery is older than Columbus. It rests on better evidence. It agrees with facts. It is confirmed by ruins, sagas, and monuments. It is time to tell the truth, to correct the schoolbooks, to revise the histories, to honor the men who really found America. This is not injustice to Columbus. It is justice to the Norsemen. They ask no more. They claim no honors not their own. They stand on their merits. They appeal to evidence. They have waited 800 years. They can wait no longer. The truth must be told. Let us tell it bravely, fully, and forever. Chapter 16. Columbus judged by his own writings. If we wish to know what Columbus really did, we must examine his own writings. He left letters, journals, and reports. These have been published, translated, and commented upon. They show what he thought, what he believed, and what he claimed. They are the best evidence. Let us see what they teach. Columbus believed that the world was much smaller than it is. He supposed that Asia extended far to the east. He thought that the ocean between Europe and Asia was narrow. He believed that by sailing west, he could reach India. This was the theory on which he acted. Columbus did not know of any land between Europe and Asia. He did not expect to find a new continent. He supposed he was going to Cathay, Cipango, and the Spice Islands. He never dreamed of America. When Columbus reached the West Indies, he supposed he had reached the coast of Asia. He called the natives Indians. He described the islands as near to the mainland of India. He sent back reports of gold, spices, and Eastern products. He believed that he had found the territories described by Marco Polo. Columbus made 4 voyages. He explored the islands of the Caribbean Sea. He touched the coast of South America. He never saw North America. He never set foot on what is now the United States. He died without knowing that he had discovered a new world. Columbus always claimed that he had reached Asia. In his letters to the King and Queen of Spain, he speaks of India. In his reports, he refers to China, Japan, and the Grand Khan. He believed he was near the source of Eastern commerce. He asked for ships to explore the coast of Asia. He proposed to conquer the lands of the Grand Khan. He never gave up this idea. The companions of Columbus shared his belief. They wrote of the Indies, of spices, and of Asiatic cities. They described the people as Indians. They believed they had reached the outskirts of the Orient. They never suspected a new continent. The name America was not given by Columbus. It was given by others. Long after his death, it was derived from Amerigo Vespucci, an Italian navigator. He sailed along the coast of South America, and was the first to suggest that it was a new continent. A map-maker gave his name to the land. Columbus had nothing to do with it. Columbus was not the first to cross the Atlantic. The Norsemen had done it 500 years before. They had sailed to Iceland, Greenland, and Vinland. They had planted colonies, built churches, and described the coast. They had left behind them sagas, inscriptions, and ruins. Columbus did not know of their voyages. But that does not alter the fact. They were the true discoverers. Columbus followed later. He was a brave man, but mistaken. He found the islands, but not the continent. He thought he had reached Asia, but he had not. He believed a false theory, and acted on it. He succeeded in crossing the ocean, but failed to find what he sought. He deserves credit for courage and perseverance. He does not deserve the title of discoverer of America. That title belongs to the Norsemen. They found the land. They knew what they found. They described it truly. They tried to make it a home. They failed, but they were first. The writings of Columbus prove this. They show what he thought, what he claimed, and what he believed. They are honest, but mistaken. They do not support his claim to be the discoverer. They show that he did not know what he had done. They show that he followed a false light, and died in error. Let us honor his courage, but correct the mistake. Let us give him his due, but no more. Let us tell the truth, and stand by the facts. Chapter 17. What the Catholic Church says. Some persons think that the honor of discovering America must belong to a Catholic, that it must be ascribed to a servant of the Church, that it is a part of the glory of Catholicism. But what does the Catholic Church say? Does she claim Columbus as the discoverer? Does she deny the Norse voyages? Does she insist that America was unknown before 1492? Let us see. The Catholic Church has never officially declared Columbus the discoverer. She honors him as a brave and devout man. She remembers his faith, his piety, and his zeal. She records his services to Spain and to religion. But she does not canonize him as the discoverer. She admits that others may have come before him. Catholic scholars have written about the Norse discovery. They have studied the sagas. They have visited the ruins. They have examined the inscriptions. They have admitted the facts. They have said that the Norsemen reached America, that they came before Columbus, that they planted colonies in Greenland and Vinland, that they built churches and lived as Christians. The Catholic encyclopedias mention the Norse voyages. They speak of Leif, Thorfinn, and the early settlers. They refer to the ruins in Greenland. They describe the Runic inscriptions. They state the evidence fairly. They do not deny the discovery. They recognize the claims of the Norsemen. Catholic historians in Europe accept the Norse theory. They teach it in their schools. They print it in their books. They do not oppose it. They do not fear the truth. They separate religion from history. They say that Columbus was a great Catholic, but not the first discoverer. They honor his faith, but admit his mistake. They do not base their religion on a geographical error. The Catholic Church has nothing to lose by the truth. Her doctrines do not depend on the date of a voyage. Her faith is older than America. She was in the world before Columbus was born. She had missions in Asia and Africa long before 1492. She sent priests to Greenland before Columbus sailed. She had bishops in Iceland in the 11th century. She had churches in Vinland. She baptized the Norse colonists. She preserved the records of their deeds. She built the ruins that still remain. She has a part in the Norse discovery. She need not deny it. She may be proud of it. Many Catholics are proud of Columbus, and justly so. He was a man of faith. He trusted in God. He carried the cross across the sea. He sought new lands for Christ. He was brave, earnest, and sincere. But he was not infallible. He made mistakes. He thought he was in Asia. He died in error. His courage was great, but his knowledge was small. His heart was right, but his science was wrong. Let Catholics honor him, but let them not oppose the truth. Let them not reject the Norse discovery. Let them not deny the facts of history. Let them remember that truth is Catholic, that science is not hostile to faith, that history is not the enemy of religion, that to know the past is to know God's providence, that the Church can afford to be just, that she gains by candor, that she loses by denial. Let them be proud of Columbus, but not unjust to the Norsemen. Let them tell the whole truth. Let them teach their children that America was known before 1492, that brave men crossed the ocean long before Columbus, that the Church was in Greenland before Spain was Christian, that the sagas are part of the Christian heritage, that the ruins are monuments of Catholic devotion, that the Norsemen were not pagans, but Christians, that they knelt at Christian altars, that they built churches to the true God, that they brought the gospel to a new world. Chapter 18. The truth vindicated. The time has come to vindicate the truth, to tell the real story of the discovery of America, to do justice to the Norsemen, to correct the errors of the past, to teach the children what really happened. This is not a question of sentiment, but of history. It is not a question of nationality, but of fact. It is not a matter of preference, but of evidence. Let us look at the facts. The Norsemen discovered America in the year 1000. They sailed from Greenland. They followed the coast of Labrador. They touched at Helluland, Markland, and Vinland. They built houses, planted grain, and lived in the land. They remained for years. They tried to found colonies. They left behind them sagas, ruins, and inscriptions. This is history. The sagas have been translated, examined, and approved. They are in old manuscripts. They are written in the style of the time. They describe real persons and places. They are confirmed by geography. They agree with each other. They have been printed by royal societies. They are accepted by scholars. This is evidence. The ruins in Greenland are Norse. They are not Eskimo. They are built in Romanesque style. They contain runic inscriptions. They are mentioned in old records. They have been photographed and described. They show churches, monasteries, and dwellings. They prove a long settlement. This is confirmation. The antiquities in America support the sagas. The Dighton Rock has runic marks. The Newport Tower is Norse in style. The Kensington Stone bears a Norse date. Other relics have been found. They agree with the voyages. They show a knowledge of the land. This is coincidence. The Church was in Greenland before Columbus. She sent priests, bishops, and missionaries. She built churches. She held synods. She baptized the colonists. She left behind her monuments. This is religious history. The Norsemen were Christians. They sailed under the cross. They brought the Bible. They worshipped the true God. They were not barbarians, but civilized men. They wrote, carved, and prayed. They deserve honor. This is justice. Columbus did not discover America. He never saw North America. He thought he had reached Asia. He died in that belief. His own writings prove it. His companions confirm it. The name America was not given by him. He followed a false theory. He acted bravely, but blindly. This is truth. The real discoverers were the Norsemen. They came 500 years earlier. They knew what they found. They described it clearly. They left records. They deserve the name. This is vindication. Let us be just. Let us correct our books. Let us teach our children the truth. Let us place the Norsemen in their proper place. Let us give them the honor they deserve. Let us not rob them of their fame. Let us not falsify the past. Let us be loyal to facts. Let us remember that truth is eternal, that error is short-lived, that justice must be done, that history must be true. Let us honor Leif, Thorfinn, and their brave followers. Let us write their names in our records. Let us build monuments to their memory. Let us keep their story alive. Let us teach it in our schools. Let us sing it in our songs. Let us engrave it on our hearts. So shall the truth be vindicated. So shall the past be honored. So shall history be redeemed. So shall the Norsemen have their crown. Chapter 19. A word to Americans. Americans love fair play. They believe in justice. They wish to know the truth. They are not afraid of facts. They do not want to build their fame on a falsehood. They wish to honor the real discoverers. They are not bound to any man, party, or tradition. They are free to think, to speak, and to act. They owe no debt to Columbus. They are not Spaniards. They are not Catholics. They are not bound to uphold a Spanish error. They are at liberty to study the question anew, to examine the evidence, to accept the truth, to correct the books, to set history right, to honor the Norsemen. This is their duty. It is also their interest. They come of Norse blood. Many of their ancestors were from Scandinavia. They inherit the spirit of the Vikings. They are brave, free, and honest. They do not love oppression, falsehood, or tyranny. They love liberty, truth, and manhood. They should be the first to honor Leif and Thorfinn, to sing their praise, to keep their memory, to tell their story, to build their monuments, to write their names in gold. They have neglected this too long. They have followed the old tradition. They have repeated the old falsehood. They have said that Columbus discovered America. They have put up his statue. They have made his day a holiday. They have taught their children the error. They have printed it in books. They have spoken it in speeches. They have carved it in stone. They have done this in ignorance. They have not known the truth. They have not studied the sagas. They have not read the runic stones. They have not visited the ruins. They have not examined the records. But now they know better. Now they see the facts. Now they can tell the truth. Now they must do justice. Let them begin at once. Let them revise the histories. Let them correct the schoolbooks. Let them change the inscriptions. Let them teach their children right. Let them take down the false statue. Let them put up the true one. Let them celebrate Leif's Day. Let them sing Norse songs. Let them read Norse sagas. Let them honor Norsemen. This will not hurt them. It will help them. It will make them strong, free, and true. It will lift them up. It will purify their patriotism. It will give them a better beginning. It will make them proud of the right men. It will ennoble their history. It will make their liberty more sacred. Let them do it boldly. Let them speak the truth. Let them fear nothing. So shall they be true Americans. So shall they honor their ancestors. So shall they build on the rock. So shall their republic stand forever. Chapter 20. The Norsemen in America. The Norsemen were the first Europeans in America. They came from Iceland and Greenland. They were led by brave chiefs. They sailed in open ships. They crossed the Atlantic. They reached the coast of North America. They called it Vinland. They explored it. They lived in it. They planted grain. They built houses. They traded with the natives. They fought with the Skraelings. They tried to form colonies. They brought cattle. They had children. They worshipped God. They built churches. They were Christians. They were civilized. They were brave. They were true men. They left their mark. They left sagas. They left ruins. They left runic stones. They left traditions. They left their spirit. They are not dead. They live in their deeds. They live in their records. They live in their blood. They live in their faith. They live in their courage. They live in their names. They are part of America. They are part of its history. They are part of its glory. Let us not forget them. Let us not deny them. Let us not rob them. Let us give them their due. Let us remember their names. Let us honor their deeds. Let us speak their praise. Let us build their monuments. Let us teach their story. Let us write it in our books. Let us engrave it on our hearts. So shall they live forever. So shall America be true. So shall justice be done. So shall truth prevail. So shall the Norsemen have their crown. If you found this video insightful and engaging, don't forget to give it a like to support the channel. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming historical videos. Feel free to leave a comment below with your thoughts or suggestions for future topics. Thank you for watching.